I know everybody is busy. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you being here today. This is a great turnout. I appreciate you coming. I want to thank FPU up front for allowing us to use this facility and for having our refreshments ready and everything. And they've just gone above and beyond, and we appreciate them working with us on that. Again, thank you so much for being here. My name is Daniel Eldridge, and I serve on the County Commission and on the Planning Commission, and I guess as being in both those roles, I'm kind of on the hot seat to kind of push this along a little bit, and so I'm happy to do that. I hope I can facilitate some good discussion as we go along with this process. This is an important endeavor that we're about to undertake here. You probably know that back in the summer, the County Commission authorized funding for the Planning Commission to develop a comprehensive plan. And this is something that's done. Many communities around the state and the region have done this, and it's something that's very important. And I think we have an opportunity to do something that's really impactful for the community. And this will be, I'm going to honor your time this morning and try to get everybody out of here within an hour. But this whole process will be a long process, and it will be 8 to 9 to 10 months maybe to develop the plan, and then we've got to implement it and follow it. And so this is a significant challenge and undertaking. I work from home 3 days a week, and I've got all my stuff in my little office upstairs, and I've got this plaque on the wall, and it's got a quote from Teddy Roosevelt. You probably know it, about the man in the arena. And the gist of it is, it's real simple to sit on the sideline and to just hurl criticisms and negativity and that kind of thing. But for the people who are making a difference, they're down in the arena, and they're going to face challenges and have setbacks and hardships and whatever, but they're the ones that are making a difference. And that's kind of the way I view all of you. Any process that you undertake is going to have some, negativity and people who want to pour cold water on it or whatever. But if you really want to make a positive difference for the people of the county, you've got to get involved and do something. And I appreciate every one of you being here. We'll jump right in it. What I would like to accomplish today, I'm going to give some background about the project and the scope of what we're talking about here, and some general foundational stuff. We'll briefly talk about the RFQ process and what that entails as far as state requirements. It's not much. But then I want to get the main portion of what I want to do today is get your feedback on, have a discussion about the qualifications for the firm that we will be retaining to accomplish this effort, and to talk about the requirements in the scope of work that we want to include, things we want to see in this package, in this plan. And then we'll talk about a timeline at the end here. So I'll go all the way through this presentation. There's 2 slides that I want to focus on, so we'll go all the way through, and then I want to back up and we'll open it up and start getting your input on that. But when I first started talking about this process, I happened to talk to Britt here and was telling him about what we were thinking about undertaking. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, TVA is here, and we're doing some strategic planning, and we're having a meeting tomorrow. Would you like to come? And I said, absolutely. And that turned out to be a great thing for me. It was made some great contacts. And through this, through meeting these folks from TVA, they were able to provide some information for me. And this slide and the next 2 slides are their slides, and they do this kind of thing a lot, and they could provide a lot of good information. I won't read this to you, but basically what this is saying is a comprehensive plan is a big picture plan. We don't get out into the detail, into the weeds, but this is a way for the communities to establish goals and priorities and guidelines. And as we think about growth, it's coming. Whether we like it or not, it's coming, and it will continue to come. And so if we're wise as community leaders, we'll try to get out in front of it and do it in a way that that makes sense, that is thoughtful and productive. And so the comprehensive plan establishes kind of a big picture framework on how we want to grow. If we look at our county, you can see that the first area of growth is going to be from the city limits to the state line down 231. And you can just go across the state line and you can see what's happening. And that's coming this way. There's also areas from the northern side of the county that's growing. And then all throughout the county, we're having people move in from out of state. We all know somebody from California who's bought property here, right? So we are growing. So this comprehensive plan helps us establish a big picture. It doesn't get down into the fine details. That's for other departments and agencies to do, but this gives us an overall plan to get us all on the same page. Some of the reasons why we need this plan. You're going to hear people say, well, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to spend money on this? Well, there's good reasons to do this. It helps our community kind of define the vision for what we want to become. I was able to go and meet with the planner up in Williamson County. Charles and Tracy and I went up to Williamson County, and they've done a good job of, they're growing, obviously, they're growing leaps and bounds, but they've done a good job of defining what their culture is there, and they wanted to make sure to preserve their rural heritage, their agricultural heritage. So they've defined their land use plan such that they have extensive growth and development along certain corridors, but then they preserve their agricultural areas. And so it kind of defines who they are as a community. And I kind of see us in that role too. I think agriculture is so important to this county that we can learn from that and kind of think about that. But this plan gives us an opportunity to do that. It gives us guidance for growth. Again, what do we want to look like? How do we want to grow? In what direction? How do we employ certain elements of infrastructure and schools and law enforcement and that kind of thing? It appeals to potential employers and funders. I know Elaine couldn't be here this morning. She got tied up. But I know the IDB talks to potential businesses come in. Will, you guys are talking to them all the time. And they need to know that we have a plan. We're just not, throwing stuff out there willy-nilly. We're actually putting some thought into this process and thinking about how we want to grow and develop infrastructure and that kind of thing. Also, for grants, we need to show that we are thinking through this and we have priorities, and we're thinking about how we want to spend the money for certain grants. That helps us. And then finally, it is a state requirement. There's different elements that the state requires for lots of different reasons, and so it's a requirement to do that. Some of the key questions, again, this is the third of the TVA slides, but these are great slides. The key questions in developing this plan: are there model communities out there who have done the same thing? And as I mentioned, Williamson County, they're one that's we need to look at. At the end of this, I've got several examples, and I'll email this out to everybody so you'll have all this in your email. But there's several examples I list on here of comprehensive plans, but there's a ton of them. You just go out there and Google them, and there's a lot of communities, not only around Tennessee, but of course around the whole Southeast, and I guess everywhere, that do this kind of thing. The level of guidance, we have to balance this. You can get down into the weeds pretty quickly, and that gets very expensive. So we don't have unlimited funds. So it also can be a detractor sometimes from certain other important elements. If one area gets more attention and more detail than the other, it kind of throws things off balance. So we've got to be careful how we go forward with this thing and make sure that we keep a kind of a high level view of what we're going to, the big picture, as we talked about earlier. The firm selection criteria, this is one of the purposes of this morning's meeting. I hope to get your feedback on that. How do we want to go about selecting a firm to do this? The bad news is I've never done this before. The good news is the firm that we select will have done this a lot, and that's why we select them. So are we looking for some, where cost is our main consideration, where time frame, experience, what is it that we're looking for? And we need to figure that out. And the other part is the level of engagement. We've kind of got an idea. We have Kevin Chastain is a consultant for the Planning Commission, and he's done a lot of this and has seen communities and helped communities do this. And he's kind of outlined how we should approach this. That's why this committee was formed. He suggested that the Planning Commission provide oversight, and then this steering committee, though, will help guide the process to help determine how this plan looks, what it consists of, and how we kind of move forward. So the general project objectives, what are we looking for in a comprehensive plan? And just about all of these are the result of some negative comments. If you want to be a detractor, these are the ways that you would detract from this plan. Why are we even doing this? We're spending money on this. We don't even need this plan. Well, these are the things that we need to make sure that we incorporate while we're doing this plan. We need to make it inclusive and make sure that all members of the community are available to have a voice, a seat at the table. And as we get in this, as you'll see, one of the elements that we'll have is we would anticipate having town hall meetings in each of the 8 districts across the county, as well as others maybe. We want to make sure that people get an opportunity to weigh in on this. What kind of community do they want? We want it to be transparent. FPU's graciously agreed to film this today, and we hope to have a web page somewhere, probably off the Planning Commission page, to post this video and other meetings, all of our town hall meetings, so that everybody knows everything that's going on. We want this plan to be actionable. We can spend a lot of time and effort and energy and money putting this together, and if it goes on a bookshelf, it's a complete waste of time. And I don't really want to be associated with that, and neither do any of you. You're too busy for that. So we need something that can be implemented. We want it to be reasonably aspirational. If it's too grand, if it's beyond our ability to achieve, it's a waste of time. If it's too small, it's a waste of time. We need to push ourselves and challenge ourselves, but it needs to be reasonable, but it needs to be something that will result in clear progress. So we've got to strike that balance, and part of your role is to do that. It needs to be timely. A lot of issues, since we talked about this summer within the County Commission, there's been several issues that have come up on the floor of the County Commission, within the Planning Commission, I'm sure in other committees that are kind of predicated on this now. They're saying, well, let's wait and see what this looks like, what this plan comes out with before we make this decision. So we have to move forward with this. Time is of the essence. We've been funded for this, and we need to move forward and make sure that we keep progress going. And the last thing, it needs to be efficient. There are lots of studies out there. All of your departments probably have spent money in the past or have consultants that have come in and developed certain studies for you that we need to take advantage of. I think one of the main problems is everybody gets so busy and they're doing their job and they're working hard, and it's hard to carve out the time to kind of get together and to compare notes. There's a lot of good information out there, and one of the things that I hope that we're able to do with this comprehensive plan is to bring in all of your expertise, all the studies, and all the ideas that you have and have in-house, and put them together and see if there's some synergy there. And that's one of the things that I think we need to task our consultant, whatever firm we choose, we need to task them with doing that. And I talked with Matt, our county IT guy, and he said he could take all these elements, these studies and reports, and put them in a virtual reading room somewhere so that any potential bidder could look at them or our citizens could look at them. So I think that's important. This is kind of a busy chart, but basically it shows visually the structure of what we're looking at. This is the main part right here, right? Our stakeholder engagement. We want to make sure that we draw out the information from our citizens and all of our stakeholders from around the county. And as we do that and we get feedback from them, that will go into be considered by this steering committee. And you guys will take this information and kind of synthesize it and think about, okay, what are we hearing? What are the citizens telling us? And how do we want to structure this plan? What should it look like? And you'll kind of help guide that into form and work with this consulting firm on, hey, these are the things that we want to include. This is what's important to us. These are areas that you want to consider, whatever. And they will start taking that direction then in developing this plan. The Planning Commission has been tasked to kind of oversee this, so they'll, once all this input goes through and keeps getting reviewed and everything, the Planning Commission will finally say, yep, this is the direction we want to go. We're going to approve this and sign off on this as the content of our plan. And then, of course, ultimately the County Commission is overseeing it all, and they'll make the final approval on all this. But you see we got a little box there for the existing data. These are some of these studies and all this stuff. I didn't know what all to put up there, but there's a lot of information there that can also feed into this firm that will help as this plan gets developed. Your role, the role of the steering committee, is to provide input on this general scope and structure and direction and content of the plan, especially as it reflects on the initial requirements. This is the important part, is getting started well. So we really need your input to help guide that. What are we going to include in this plan? You're also be asked to periodically review the progress once we retain a firm and they start going down the road of developing this plan. We're going to ask you to periodically meet back. We're not going to meet you to death, but maybe quarterly or something like that, where you can see the progress they're making and give direction. Well, this is great, more of this, less of this, change this. You also, as we alluded to earlier, each of you have information in your circle of influence there that will bear on this process, and we need it. We need you to give us your expertise, to give us the data that you've got that can help craft this and give us a better product. And then finally, we're asking you just to promote and be an advocate for this process and raise awareness and talk about it. Tell people that this is something that's going on, it's important, and we need input. So that's your charge this morning. These are the various members that have been invited so far. This is not an exhaustive list. There's the other there, and there are likely many other folks who should be on this. And just because you're not officially on the steering committee, doesn't mean you shouldn't attend these meetings. We ask, of course, all of our county commission has been invited, all the planning commission, but there may be others that you suggest that come, and we want to make sure that they get on this too. This is just the first pass of a pretty good cross-section of everybody who has input, different perspectives across the county. The solicitation process, I met with the finance office, our director of finance, and was talking to them about how do we go about doing this. My background is in federal procurement, and I know federal procurement law, and I know how it operates. Very different in the state and county side, extremely different. So I had to go get educated from them on what the process is. And basically it's a user-defined format. There is no set format for what these RFQs and RFPs have to look at. Again, that's very different. But luckily there are many examples out there. And so I've pulled some already, and we're going to be able to kind of put an RFQ together based on some of these other examples that we've got. They recommended probably a 4-week response time. That's usually, these firms, they do this a lot and they can turn it pretty quick, but that gives them a good time to give a good, thoughtful response, so we need to be planning that in our timeline. I was asking the question, how do you get it out there? On the federal side, there are mechanisms to disseminate these RFQs and RFPs. People know if you're bidding on government contracts, you know where to go find them. And there are similar services here that the county finance office can use. But also locally, just the Elk Valley Times, and we can also go directly to certain vendors. We're aware of engineering firms, and I've in fact already talked to some who do this kind of thing and who are interested. They've already provided some information and help. So we want to get as many responses as we can. There's a 2-tier process. This is what's really different. But the first step is just qualifying these firms, and as we talk a few minutes about what qualifications we're looking for, this is that initial round where we put it out there and say, this is what we're looking for in a firm. This is kind of the requirements that we're wanting to see that get met, but we're also looking for your background and qualifications. And then they'll respond and say, hey, this is who we are, this is all the good stuff we've done in the past. Then we'll select the one that we think meets our needs the best, and then we enter into negotiations with them on a price. So that's a little bit backwards in the way I'm used to doing it, but that's the way the Tennessee Code Annotated lays it out. We can do modular add-ons for elements. There's lots of different elements that we can look for, a housing plan or a parks and rec plan or whatever. Again, those specific elements may get too much into the weeds, but we can do some. This is the basic thing we're looking for, and then we'd like you to price out some of these extra things and see what, if we can afford that too. Again, the document library that we talked about should be established, and that's a good resource for these folks. We've got, again, I've got multiple examples of these RFPs, and that won't be a problem. And then making sure that you guys all kind of get a pass over this thing to make sure that your individual perspectives are captured here. We want to make sure that this plan is, in fact, a comprehensive plan and meets the needs from every perspective. I won't read this, but this is the actual summary of the Tennessee Code that talks about this. One of the things that's interesting about this is this last bullet. excuse me, if you're currently working with an engineering firm, you can open up discussions with them, and that's pretty convenient. Mayor Hartman and I were talking. The city works with an engineering firm, and they reached out to me when they heard that we were doing this and gave some good information. So we're using that to kind of help develop our RFP process. But this basically just reiterates the previous chart. So this is one of the two charts that I want to come back to and get your discussion on in a minute. But we need to think about what qualification considerations we have. What are we looking for in a firm? These are some of the things that off the top of my head, that I thought would be important. Resumes of key personnel. You know, if they have specific engineers that have 40 years of experience, we'd like to see that. Their resource and staff availability. We don't want to be on the back burner. We want to be a priority for whoever we retain. Make sure they've got proper licenses and insurance. We want to get past performance recommendations. You know, we want to see what you've done, talk to past clients and see what their experience has been with you. And then just a list of, do you have previous examples of these plans that we can go through? And again, you can go out there and Google this and find all kinds of examples, but we want to get somebody who produces a quality product that not only is, you know, it's filled with good data, but it also is presented well, because there's two elements to this thing, right? It has to be usable. So we need to see some examples. So I want to get some other feedback on this in just a second. So keep that in the back of your mind. This is the other thing that we'll come back to. Scope of work considerations. What are we asking them to do for us? This is the more difficult part. We may not resolve this today. This may be an email thing that, as you think of things over the next few days, you can send to me. But potential topic areas, land use. That's number one. That's in all of these. You know, how do we want to go about this? And this will affect our county zoning regulations more than likely. But this helps us establish those boundaries like we were talking about in Williamson County, where these areas can be developed industrially and commercially, whatever. These areas are going to be retained for agricultural use and that kind of thing. So we need to think through that. That also involves, you know, utilities and infrastructure. So there's a lot to that piece. You can see the rest of these. Transportation, housing. Again, any one of these you can probably dive into very deeply. They all have their own studies that you can commission. So we're trying to extract that balance between getting too much in the detail of this and driving our cost up. There are comprehensive plans out there. I think Rutherford County has one that is huge, and I'm sure it was expensive. But we are trying to kind of strike this balance. We want to make sure we hit these topics and everything that is of concern to any of you and any of your organizations or offices. We need to make sure that we're hitting those. I do think we need to prioritize the implementation plan to show a general cost, a general time frame, and an owner. So we know as we start moving forward, if we start applying for grants or when we start looking at development projects, you know, what's the first thing we've got to do? We need to kind of know that. And they do a good job. If you look at these plans, most of them generally lay these out. We want to make sure that we capture that in ours. List of specific funding sources. This is something that not all of them have, but it is a good thing. These firms, they do this for a living, and so they're very familiar with what, you know, grants are out there, Department of Agriculture, HUD, whoever. There are lots of grants from the federal side, even from the state side, that we may not even be aware of, that they might. And so we want to engage them to kind of help us, you know, put us on to some of this, these resources that we can use. Once we get into the implementation side of this will be a big help. So we need to include that, I think. And then the community input. This is an important part. And some firms, I mean, what I'm hearing, just talking to different folks, some do a lot better job of this than others. But there are many ways that we can reach out and engage our members of the community. The town hall meetings, I think, is a good way because it's a physical presence, right? We can go to each district, to the school maybe or something, and have our county commissioners from that district there, and people can come if they want to and talk. If they don't want to, at least they had an opportunity, right? But you can do surveys, social media. There's lots of ways that we can engage the community, but we need to make sure that what we're looking for, part of our requirement in this project is that we look out for good community engagement. A couple of other quick considerations here. We got to stay focused. We have in the defense industry, we call it mission creep. You get into it and you start, it morphs into something else. So we need to constantly remind ourselves the big picture. What are we here to do? We're here to develop this comprehensive plan to help our community grow, and keep reminding ourselves of that. We need to maximize participation and prioritization from all stakeholders. You guys, I appreciate you being here this morning. Everybody here is missing something else to be here, and I appreciate you making that a priority. There'll be a lot of folks that we have to engage with, and we need to, if you guys make this a priority and think it's important and talk about it to the folks that you interact with, they will make it a priority too. Need to think about our budget, not only in the scope of the plan that we're doing, but there's administrative costs associated with that. If we do a survey, for example, if we have to do a mail out or something, that's pretty expensive. So there are other things that we need to think about from a budget standpoint, make sure we stay within budget. Leveraging these complementary resources. There are not only a lot of studies, there are a lot of agencies out there who do a great job at this kind of thing. I was talking to Britt earlier today, and TVA, they provided some of these slides today. They're all over this. They do this kind of stuff, and it's good help that we wouldn't have to pay for otherwise. The IDB, I know they interact with a lot of folks. There's a lot of TDEC. There's a lot of folks who have expertise in these areas that we need to draw on. We need to define what success is. That seems simple, but let's think through that. What exactly do we hope to come out of this thing? This is not going to be a magic wand that helps us do everything we need to do. It won't give us a detailed map on how to accomplish everything we want to accomplish. This is a big picture process, but we need to figure out exactly what we're shooting for and make sure that the result we get lines up with that. We need to maintain our momentum between these monthly or quarterly, however often we meet. We need to make sure that we're maintaining that momentum. And the same with the Planning Commission. We meet monthly, so we need to make sure we're doing that, and we intend to make sure that we give an update to the County Commission on a monthly basis so they know what we're doing and kind of have some oversight there. We can talk about this later. This is just a notional timeline, and this is probably too aggressive, but this is what I came up with. Of course, we're meeting today. What I would like to do, by November the 2nd, it would be great if we could have a final RFP to present to the Planning Commission, and so that will take input from you guys on the scope and on these priorities as far as the qualifications. But that would be great if we could have that ready to go. The County Finance Department could issue it by the 6th. It gives them about a month, and we would have them back in on the December the 7th. That's the December Planning Commission meeting. We'd be ready to do a down select then. By the 8th, we would notify the successful firm. By the 13th, we can begin discussions and negotiations, and I would expect that they would come back in here to this group, to the steering committee, and do a presentation so you could kind of see if they met your requirements as far as qualifications and what their ideas are on how to meet our expectations here. And then the Planning Commission will evaluate the format and the price of their proposal back in early January. And then beyond that, I'm not sure how it lays out. At some point, we have to go to the County Commission, and they would approve the final, contract and the final plan for this thing. But so that's kind of the way I'm thinking that it all lay out. Here's some resources. As I said, I'll email this out to everybody. These are very few. There's a lot, and you can go and look at them for yourself. But those are some that I looked at. So I want to open it up to you now. These two things that I really think we need to discuss are what qualifications are we looking for, criteria that we want to put on our firms, what are we looking for, and then the other thing is what are we looking for in terms of the scope of the project and what we want the firm that we ultimately retain to be able to deliver to us. So what are your thoughts on that, or any other thoughts? I'm going to throw it up to you now.
Question: have you defined this in context of scope, the time horizon? Is it a 20-year plan, a 10-year plan, 30-year plan?
That's a good question. We need to talk about it. A lot of what I've seen is about a 20-year plan. If you go look at it, that seems to be typical. Anybody got any other information on that? The ones I've seen are about 20 years. John, do you agree with that?
I think it's about right, yeah, 15.
But that's a good point. So we need to define that scope. What else?
Within that 20-year plan, will it have benchmarks set that we hit
and then it's a living document so that it continues to grow. When we set benchmarks that we'd like to see happen throughout this plan in the 20 years, and then based on those benchmarks, do we need to have a contingency for how we grow from those benchmarks going forward?
Well, two things to that. One of the things that the guy from the engineering firm that I talked to, one of the pieces of advice that he gave me is don't put specific timelines, put priorities. Because you may not make 3 years, but you do know that A happens before B. So that's one way to think about that. The other thing is, I've seen a lot of what you see, if you'll Google this comprehensive plan, a lot of what you see is updates. So a lot of communities, they develop one like we're doing now, and then in 10 years, we may come back with an update. Take what we have, and let's update it and refresh it and make sure that we're still on track. So we probably would be careful to be too specific on timeframes, but priorities would be a good idea.
Is there a plan now? Is there a plan now? Is there an existing plan?
Not that I'm aware of, which speaks to the urgent need of while we're in this room.
When looking at the firm, past experiences, other communities they've worked with, maybe one that has worked with communities that have similar demographics as ours, as well as much larger communities. I don't think you want to just focus on a firm that's only worked with large communities, but at the same time, you might not want to focus on ones that just work with communities our size either, because there's experiences on both.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a plan, but we hope what happened to that one doesn't happen to this one. It was never updated or implemented.
How long ago was that then?
Well, the name of the plan was 2020, and it was about 1990, I believe.
So, to me, $50,000 sounds pretty cheap for everything we would be asking for them to do. Are there opportunities for us to apply for a grant and use that $50,000 as the match money? John, you may know more about this.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. One's through 3-star. A lot of the 3-star meetings that I go to across my region is it's always mentioned as well about a long-range plan and using the funds for that.
Well, that brings up a good point. We do need to be thinking about additional funding sources. And I will tell you this, the $50,000 number came from our consultant. We were in a planning commission meeting, and the question was, well, how much does this plan cost? Something like this. And he said, you could probably get a good one for $50,000. So we went to Williamson County, and Charles and I said, well, how much did your plan cost? And he said, $150,000. So I was panicking. However, the guy from Croy that I talked to, he provided some examples, some there at the end here, that were under $50,000. So you can get a basic plan for that. We're in the ballpark, okay? But to your point, I think, Amy, if we want to expand it into other areas and we can get funding for it, grants or whatever, then we have an opportunity to get more bang for our buck. As they're already in this process, now's the cheapest time to add something. It's hard. It's a lot more expensive to have a separate standalone plan than it is to have this as an add-on. So if there are opportunities that you guys have within your individual budgets, or of grant opportunities, that would be very helpful.
I would just like to say, I'm not pushing any firm in particular, but just to give everybody some information on Croy Engineering. They have done a lot of work for the city. They're very easy to work with. Houston has been our front person, Houston Matthews, and he's very easy to talk to. He's realistic. He's not this pie in the sky salesman that's just selling you a ware or something. So they do have experience in Huntsville and how Huntsville has grown and almost tripled in size, but also small communities. And I think we would definitely be an interest of them because of how closely, we are and how closely we interact with them. So they have done large cities, small cities. I can just speak on their experience with us. I'm not saying that's who we should go with, but they are near to us. So accessibility is key, whether they're doing a project for you, like the sidewalk project, or whether they're doing a comprehensive plan, they're very accessible.
It is a cost factor. You know, if they're having to travel down here a lot from Nashville or Knoxville or wherever, it is a cost factor. So that local will show up in that too, in our cost negotiation.
This may be very simplistic, but I don't know, maybe challenge all of us to think about like where have we visited, whether it's in Tennessee or out of state, like what communities have we visited that we feel like they're just knocking it out of the park? You know, that we're like, oh my gosh, they got it going on. And then see if you can locate their, you know, if they have a comprehensive plan. Where it seems like somebody's got it, like I said.
Great idea. Doug, do you have something?
Has the planning commission identified some areas in y'all's discussions that we could grow from or could maybe look at from the steering committee side to help the planning commission? Is there some areas that have been identified that y'all feel are critically key?
You haven't been to a planning commission meeting, have you, Doug? No, we haven't done that, and we should. We get wound around a lot of axles in those meetings. And frankly, that's why this is a good idea, because you can kind of get away from, you know, your daily grind to do that. We haven't, but I know Charles and Tracy probably have good ideas about that, and the planning commission could think through that, and that would be helpful. Yeah. Any other thing on this? Any other ideas about this? Good, let's get in.
I didn't notice a soil scientist being on the group because, you know, that's what determines, you know, what we really can do. When you start with the first overlay, it's, you know, it's what can you use the land for? I know ag extension, I don't know if they were invited to it, but they don't have a soil scientist on staff there. But the reason Madison County is the way it is has nothing to do with Rockets. It's because it has more Class 1 land than any other county in the Tennessee Valley, and is bordered by the Tennessee River. They have the natural assets for it. That's the reason they can have all the things that they have there. We're not going to be them because we don't have the land assets they do, nor the water assets that they have. But I think a soil scientist within this group would be good.
That's a great suggestion. And yeah, anybody can provide, you know, name.
And there is, and there's the soil map for Lincoln County was completed about 5 years ago, and so it's up to date. So it's not something.
Farm Bureau incidentally was invited, and Josh Ogle is the president of Farm Bureau, and he's going to participate. He just couldn't be here today. So we do have that agricultural community represented, but that is a great idea, Bill, about the soil scientist. Anything on this? Anything else about how we want to go about? These are great suggestions.
The RFQ, or maybe stating the obvious, ownership of the final product. Make sure that the county has ownership of the final product. It's not owned by the people that develop it.
Oh, yeah. That's typical. Yeah, if you pay for it, you get it. But yeah, that's true. We need to make sure that and in whatever formats we need to. I mean, bound or obviously digital. There's lots of different ways that we do that. But that's a beautiful one. So what about this? This is the more difficult one that probably go beyond our time limit here as you think about some more of these. What do we hope to get out of this? And again, there's a balance between digging into the weeds and, you know, making sure that it's a plan that's usable and beneficial to us, that covers everything we need. There's kind of a balance there.
Environmental impact.
Curious about I know we have a county, city represented leadership here, but is this, the plan going to be something, a lot of those things are city focused, like priority things. Is this going to be a plan that both city and county kind of buy into together, or is it just a county plan?
I would hope that would be the case. Right now, the county's the only one that's provided funding, so Mayor Hartman, before you leave, you can drop off a check. No, I mean, I did go before the Board of Mayor and Alderman work session, and just to tell them what we were doing. And I mean, I think they're like everybody else. They've got, you know, lots of priorities and limited funding. But I would hope that they would see the benefit of this too, and if they want to expand certain areas and can bring resources to the table, that would be helpful. Right now, this is a county funded project, so the county objectives would get the priority, but I would love to see the city involved, and that's why they're been invited, and that's why she showed up, but she wants to participate too, so.
Yeah, I have spoken with the board about this, and I know Daniel came and spoke before the board, and just gathering more information today, I can take that back, but I do feel like this is something that the city will support financially also.
It makes sense. It's good for everybody. We all are neighbors here, and it's good for everybody. And really, we're codependent. I mean, both, there's elements of both, and so, I know that there's a great working relationship, so I'm hopeful that we can, kind of dive into this together. What other elements are we missing here that we want to make sure that gets captured?
It's just a comment. I'm glad that Mike Magnuson's here, because when you look at where our development's probably going to occur, it's going to be in the southwest part of the county, because it has the adaptable land there. It's closest to the interstate in that, and with Railroad Bend Road going into where all the development's occurring in Limestone and Madison County. I mean, if we develop the infrastructure there, that's going to be where our great growth area is going to be in that area.
That's a good point. There's a railroad in that direction and lots of resources. Anything else? How about engagement, community input? Any other ideas on how we might? We're going to try to. FPU is gracious enough to film this. We're going to try to post it somewhere, but we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to have input. If they don't, then it's their choice, but we want to make sure that they get an opportunity. And that's just a matter of getting the information out there. I'm hopeful we're going to reach out to the Elk Valley Times and make sure that they get this information, and maybe go to the radio stations and talk about what we're doing. Any other engagement mechanisms?
Will they have a cost analysis of what this plan will cost? Just an estimate of what they suggested.
Yeah, part of what we're doing here, when we put these scope elements in there, that's going to help them come back to us, during the negotiation, and say, okay, it's going to cost this amount, and so at that point we got a choice to make. Make be great, no problem. We may have to line some stuff out or shrink back some of our, the depth of where we're going. But before we start off, that's kind of what we're doing, is defining, what all we want in there to see how much it's going to cost. They can give us whatever we want. We can get as detailed as we want, but we don't have the resources for that. That's a good question.
Potential top areas. I was at a meeting in Huntsville a few weeks ago on real estate, and the city of Huntsville put a chart where they spent $300 million the last 10 years on quality of life assets. So I think what would be interesting is if this firm, when they're doing their research, could show us communities like ours that have made this step, ones we maybe not only be like Huntsville, but aspire to be to grow like they're being able to manage their growth. But what always comes to and every challenge most everybody here has is revenue. How do we pay for it? And so I'm just curious how these communities have raised taxes, have they charged other fees? I know Murray County has a thing where even if you build in the city of Columbia, you pay a Murray County privilege tax to build something. So it's not like a permit fee, but it is a permit fee. So these other communities have fees that we don't have, but developers are coming there to develop things, they should pay, impact fees, so we can afford the stuff we want to do.
That's a great point, and there have been discussions about impact fees and things of that nature. I think the state just recently opened that up.
Turned it down.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. Murray and Rutherford took the lead on that, and it was, Marshall County has it. But if you didn't have it implemented, I think it was 2007, they closed that. So we can't without state legislature passing
Well,
it.
they don't call it impact fees, but they charge you $15,000 for water.
Yeah.
So, they have ways they're getting revenue maybe they don't call it impact, but they're definitely generating more money than we do here.
That's a great, that would be a great thing data to have, though, is how do we, you know, if this is our grand design, this is what we want to get to, how do we pay for that? What are some suggested, you know, ways to do that? So that's a good point.
Daniel, I'll also bring up the fact that Mayor Crabtree from Winchester has contacted me, and he's like, "Help, you know, what do we do here?" Of how this growth has happened around Timmsford Lake, and they were not prepared for it. The same thing's going to happen to us if we're not prepared for it. Now, we don't have the lake, but and most of the people are weekend people. They're not year-round people. And so, you know, they're really struggling with their sewer, their water, the roads. And he said, you know, the roads around the lake were just like a pig path, you know, and now we've got all this traffic on the weekends. And so they are really having some growing pains. And this is what we need to look at. Let's try to get ahead of it. And, you know, we want the growth to come, but be more prepared. I don't think you'll always have everything in place that you want, but at least have it in our minds and a plan.
Yeah. And that's the problem, because you get a lot of detractors that say, well, you know, why are we spending money on this? We don't need this right now. Well, you don't need it right now. You need it in 5 years, and then it's too late. And then you're way behind, and it's costing you a lot more money. If you get out in front of it, it's, you know, as he can attest to, then it's the way to do it. So I think we're almost late, but we're not. I mean, I think we're right at the critical point here. As we see this growth really escalating, well, we better do something. We better get ahead and be thinking about it. So thanks for that input.
Could you go back to the timeline for just a minute? I just want the city, if you don't mind, to be cognizant when you speak to the city administrator, because Parks and Rec, we were trying to collaborate on with Croy and the city about a comprehensive plan, and then that just, we waited for months and didn't hear back, and so now we're having to backtrack and redo how we're going to.
You're talking about the Parks and Rec plan, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, which may be something that we want to include in this as well. But I just want the board, when you speak to them, especially the city administrator, be cognizant of this timeline, because I don't want that to impede what the county's trying to achieve because of the ball being dropped in regards to what our timeline is. Because it did throw a hiccup in what our goals were for Parks and Rec, and now we're having to redo what we want to do there and reduce the services of that contract with Croy.
So this may not be realistic. This is, again, my aggressive tendencies coming out here. Is this, anybody got a comment on the timeline? We think
aggressive.
It's aggressive. Yeah.
I mean, you got the holidays in the middle of all that. I think you're going to struggle to achieve what the January 4th is, I think.
My theory is if you plan short, you can always extend it. It's probably going to get extended. I'd rather extend from the 6th than, you know, from January, but I don't know. It may be unrealistic. This also stresses me out when I do this to myself.
I do think time is of the essence. I mean, you know, from me attending the planning and zoning and speaking with Williamson County myself, we got to meet the mayor at one of the training things, and they were very supportive of what we were trying to do. But I like this. As you stated earlier, there's lots of things that are occurring that we need to be cognizant of to try and get ahead of. We're almost late, you know, in a lot of regards, especially in the subdivision regulations. We've got these signs that have popped up and look awful, and so we need to try. I mean, time is of the essence, so I'm trying to stick with this and then alter as needed. But 5 years, we're kind of 5 years behind, so to speak. You use that analogy there. So,
Daniel, are you going to send out this presentation to everyone? So
I will.
we have the dates?
Yep, I'll send it to everybody on the steering committee, and I guess the planning commission and county commission, just as a courtesy. So we want to make changes. Tell me now, because it's going out.
So can I ask, going back to the not the timeline, but to the RFP content, community input. The town hall meetings, I kind of get that. Once you start getting content in, you'll want to have town hall meetings to discuss it. But what about the surveys? Is the survey intended to be post document creation? Or how does the survey fit into the timeline
if you, and again, I've not looked at a lot of these, but if you start looking at these firms and how they do that is one of the things they do, and a lot of it's through social media, it's online. You know, what do you want from your community? You know, do you want to, is it important to have, you know, more industrial development or maintain your agriculture stuff or whatever it is, you know?
So they'll go do the solicitation as part of the quote, is what you're thinking?
Yes, this survey will be, they will be, we will all be involved in a lot of, especially these town hall meetings or whatever, but they are going to, they're going to kind of, in my mind here, they would collect the data and make sure it's organized and managed and synthesized into something that's useful.
Is there a target date that we've set, that we would target to have the output from the RFP? So you hire firm A, you have 6 months or 9 months, or have we defined a timeline for that?
No, and that's by design, I think, unless we want to talk about that. As I said earlier, I don't know how to do this, but they do. And so my thought is, once we see, you know, we get a slate of qualified potential candidates and we select one, we're going to select the one that's done this a lot. And then as we get into negotiations, they're going to be able to tell us, look, this is the way to do it. It's going to take this long. This has not worked in the past. You know, here's some options for you. This one may not be an option because of this. They're going to guide us through this.
So they'll propose a delivery date.
Yeah.
And we will, part of the negotiation process, define the source.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot more to this schedule later, but we're not in a position, we don't know enough to talk about that yet. That's my thought.
Yeah, got it.
So if you go to your next slide, really today, we need to make sure that what we put in, the RFP process, right there. We need to make sure that the top part is what we want the people who's going to bid on the RFP to be able to consider.
Yeah. What are we asking them to do this?
Then, after that, they will be doing the prioritization, helping us with funding sources and community input. Really, we're the top section today. We need to decide, what do we want to put in the RFP that says, these are the topics we need you to cover.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. The prioritization, you guys will be doing that too. Once we select somebody and they come back, then they'll get guidance from you on what the prioritization is. But yes, and we're establishing up front, this is what we're asking to buy. So tell us all the good experience you've got doing these things, and tell us, you know, how you're going to approach it.
So what few items have we added other than the list? I know we had environmental impact was one of the potential topic areas. Did we add any others right now?
Quality of life was another one that I saw.
Okay.
Would retail strategies fall under economic development?
I think, yeah.
Is it education included?
Yeah, education.
Retail strategies.
We could probably call that out, yeah. I mean, there was a quality of life on there, but maybe not.
Livability, is that?
Livability, yeah. These are just, I got these from tables of contents from some other plans. These are typical things that you see in these other plans. So we'll look at education.
I know that obviously as communities grow, you know, building schools is a big part of the expense and the planning that goes into that. And then from the college side and TCAT side, we're expanding and planning down the road too. So it'd be nice to kind of have some synthesis of all that.
That's the engine that drives growth, right? So you got to look at education all the way through. So yeah, that's a good point. Probably needs to be called out separately. And I don't know how to. They may roll that into something else. Typically, I'm sure they look at it because that's such a key element. But again, we can identify it, and then they can say, well, we usually talk about it in quality of life or whatever it is. But I'll note that too. What else? Anything else?
So finance will draft an RFP, will you email that out to this group and say, yes, this is what we want to put out?
I will. They're not drafting it.
Okay.
So I'm probably going to draft it. So I'm going to need a lot of input. What I'll do is I'll make sure that everybody gets to look at it. This group, Planning Commission, Finance, of course. But I'm just going to take other examples. I mean, it's not rocket science. You can just, you know. But I want to make sure it reflects what we're talking about here. So
You might want to call me when you get it assembled for review.
probably do it virtually, I would hope. Unless y'all want to meet, you probably don't like that. I don't mind meeting as much as you want to meet or need to, if y'all feel like it. I know everybody's busy, but I will definitely make sure you see it and get some comments on it.
Well, I think our job too is to look at some of the samples that are out there that you shared, and just like where we look at livability, like I'm assuming that is like quality of life, even outdoor parks, rec, all that goes into live, but if it doesn't, just looking at those and seeing, like you said, what the topics are, and I'm assuming something falls under that, and if it doesn't,
Right.
it might need to be added.
That's a great point. So you got homework. Go out and look at these, right? Look at these plans, and if you see one that you like that incorporates your area of interest, point that out. Or if hey, I'm not seeing this, I have an interest here and it's important and it's not represented, I need to get it. So please do that over the next few days, because we'll move forward with it. For our aggressive schedule pushes us to keep moving. So, but that's a great point, Gabe. Anything else?
I do think that it's important that the city is involved with this, because like with land use, if you're gonna do overlays of different areas of the county, then obviously the city's in the county, and if you don't have the city's buy-in to what this is gonna say, it seems like it's not complete. Like, if they're not gonna wanna adopt it and use it. So
Right.
I don't know how you get their buy-in, but it seems like that's important for this to be a value.
I agree, and I would hope that they would, they were very positive when I met with them. And so I would hope that they, as the mayor goes back and talks to the alderman, and we have City Planning Commission represented here too, and so hopefully they will help encourage, more participation. So, anything else? 3 minutes. Got 3 minutes left. So thank you all so much. I think this has been very productive. Again, this was kind of an introductory thing, so you have homework. Go look at some plans and think about things that you need included. Email me. You've all got my email address. You can call me. My number's on my signature block, I guess. Any way you want to get in touch with me, that's fine. And give me this information. I'll try to cobble together RFP and see if we can get it out there to everybody and then get your input. And so, this is a collective effort as we move forward. We want you to continue to stay engaged. Please talk about it to the folks that you're with and that you work with. And I think this has an opportunity to do some make us very significant progress in a very good way. So thank you all for your participation.